I'm going to call to order the January Finance Committee meeting. If everybody please be seated. John, you coming up? Okay. Dan, we'll get you right there. Full house. We got everybody here. Yay. We could really do some damage. And I got the gavel, not the mayor. We might get something done here. Anyway, thank everybody for coming out today. Before we get going, I've asked the city manager just to provide a comment or two on the storm and kind of where we are and what's going on. Lee.
Thank you, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joynes, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and the members of the Finance Committee and other council members. I'm going to ask our Emergency Management Director, August Vernon, to come forward to give us a little update on the only issue outstanding right now with the storm is power.
Thank you, committee members, Mayor Pro Tem. As we all know, the storm impacted us probably pretty significantly yesterday morning, about 4 or 5 a.m. Both our 911 centers were very rapidly overwhelmed, literally with hundreds of phone calls for down power lines, power outages, and fires. This time there was ice, but no impacts on roads. It was a lot of down trees and a lot of down power lines. And the same issue we've seen again, which has led to the power outages, is all those down trees are wrapped up with power lines, so there's a process they have to go through to safely get rid of those or take care of those. So Duke Energy has done a really good job. Even today, the last report we just got from Duke Energy is the numbers are down to 8,000. Which
that's people or households?
That is households.
That's paying customers. Okay.
That's paying customers, yes.
8,000. Okay.
So that is down from the 44,000 down to, it was 18,000 this morning. We've had several conversations with them. They certainly were very quickly overwhelmed. I saw out-of-state resources yesterday. So I'm pretty comfortable to say that I think they'll get most of this addressed by tomorrow. No problem. Beyond that, everything else response-wise went very well.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from anybody? Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
What parts of the city or county were the most hardest hit?
This time, the northern part of the county, King, Tobaccoville, some of our employees, some other people in here do not still have power. So really the northern part, Stokes County, that type of area. Every storm's a little different. It's very hard to forecast exactly where. But this time, the northern part of Forsyth County.
Ms. Burke.
Yes, you were talking about the parts up there in the Oak Summit, Germantown Road, all up in that area was hit very hard.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And I will say, obviously I live in the West Ward, but I was in the Northwest Ward and North Ward as well. My mother's out at Salemtown, excuse me. And it was devastating out that way, the amount of lines that are down. Because there was no snow on the roads, you kind of think it's not so bad, but I went through and if you had a pine tree, it had a broken limb or something on it.
Yes, sir.
It was major.
Yes, sir.
Well, we thank y'all's efforts.
Thank you.
Chairman, I do want to give a shout out to our crews. I mean, yesterday when we didn't have any issues with snow, we redeployed all of our snow crews, our streets crews with our tree crews, as well as sanitation crews who have hoist trucks, and they cleared over 100 roads from trees. So they really worked hard.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good job. Excuse me. Would like to recognize Representative Montgomery, who's here. Welcome back. Having so much fun, you couldn't stay away. I think I know why you're here, so if you would like to offer a comment later on, I will certainly recognize you.
And you also have Commissioner Dr. Fleming Oliver.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Welcome as well. We've got a full house and celebrities in the audience. We got a busy day. As usual, we will do the consent items first. I've been given C1, C5, and C10. Are there any others anyone would like? That's 1, 5, and 10. Any others? Can I get a motion?
Approval.
We have a motion on the balance.
Are we doing the vote?
I think so, yeah.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Everybody just wait a minute. And Ms. Scipio, if you're not on the committee, you don't get to vote, even though you get a nice seat here. And that is approved, so we will just start at the top. We'll top with C1. If the Secretary read that one, please.
Item C1, resolution approving the 2019 federal action plan for the city of Winston-Salem.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Adams. Or, Mr. Raleigh, would you like to give us a brief overview?
Sure. Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the committee and council. So we do this item once annually to set the city's legislative priorities for the upcoming Congress, and we do have with us Leslie Mozingo, our federal lobbyist, to review that item with you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zingo, if you will come up, please. And if you'll please give your name and address for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. Leslie Mozingo and Strategics Consulting, 4315 Woodburn Drive in Clemens, North Carolina, and also at 400 North Capitol Street in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year, for those I haven't seen. So, it was pulled from the consent, so I want to know, is there specific questions I need to address, or do you just want me to walk through something? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Ms. Adams, you asked.
What I'm interested in, and I read over it, and it's pretty much, as you know, basically like we always have had in the past. Hopefully, with the change in the House, we might be able to see some gains, because we haven't seen many over the past decade. My comment is based on, I noticed in there we have a lot of items that are relevant to job creation, affordable housing, and the like, which kind of lends itself to the city's strategic vision anyway. But again, and I know you've heard me say this for a very long time, I think we need to make sure, Leslie, if we can, we have got to get our people in the city of Winston-Salem to help eradicate some of this unemployment or these jobs that they're not able to assess or access because of lack of job training and education. And I want you to understand in the council that it's good to have 1 through 5, 6 priorities, but we have got to start hanging our hat on trying to get some of our folks to better paying jobs, as well as support for small business startup. And particularly I'm interested in the urban core. You know, that's just where I'm at right now, because the city can get all of the accolades that they want as to the best place to live. We got the best innovation quarter. But if we have not done our due diligence to get our folks that live in poverty, our folks who don't have a high school diploma or anything, our homeless population, affordable housing, workforce, and the farm bill, along with, again, transportation. You remember we talked about years ago that we need to understand or be able to get our people from the urban core to the areas where the food is.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we don't have free transportation at least twice a week, that they get on a circulator type Winston-Salem transit bus, and we need help. You know, we've asked for this before. We need help from the federal government to make that happen. If we're going to open up the farmers market twice a week in Winston at the fairgrounds, we got to have a means of getting poor people there. And it's not by them walking. That's not going to happen. So, again, I'm looking forward to working with you and the council as we move forward to try to get some gains in March when we go to Washington. And I just want the public to know, Councilmember Clark said our lobbyists, we prefer to call her our federal advocate. Thank you so much, Ms. Mozingo.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I hear what Councilwoman Adams is saying, but we do have agencies here, and we need to get, what are they doing to help to get our people who are poor to the places they need to go? What kind of strong programs do they have? Because we've been singing in this little tune for many, many years. And the accountability for agencies who we do support, we need to get Mr. City Manager, just let them give us what are they doing to meet these needs.
Yes, ma'am.
And is this out on the website or anywhere? Is this just here that people can see this, the public?
I'm assuming it's on the website.
It's on the website. Okay, very good.
It's on the agenda. We can put it somewhere else where it's more prominently found. We can do that after the meeting.
And I think it does, Mr. City Manager, so we can hopefully get some feedback from the community as to what also they'd like to see built onto this plan, what we have right now.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to get into this, but every time I hear Washington speaking about the job opportunities for minorities and for the poor, and it seems that the President of the United States wants to brag. Well, these jobs are not what you brag about, because they're working people on low-paying jobs, and plus they're underemployed, and they're not meeting the needs of the poor. So we're not excited as a minority. I'm never excited when I hear the President speak up about what he's doing for minorities. We in this city, we're doing a poor job in meeting the needs. We talk about all these fancy things with the hunger and with the this and the that. But when you look, and you go where I go every day on Northwest Boulevard and Patterson, we see the poor continue to be poor. I've seen young men and women who had no gray in their hair, and I've seen them linger on those corners until some of them are even becoming handicapped, and also their method of communicating poor. So look at the city, look where we are, and what are we doing with these agencies to move a step forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, Mr. Mayor?
Just real quick, I'm going to be with Ms. Bazingo 2 weeks, I guess, U.S. Conference of Mayors.
Next week.
Meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be getting a little early start on it. Councilmember Adams will have to do a little spade work before we all get there in March.
Thank you.
And as Ms. Adams mentioned, the city council does go up normally the second week in March.
Yes.
For the National League of Cities meetings, and not only do we meet with our elected officials, but we also, this last time, particularly met with various departments like HUD and Transportation to try to help get a better understanding of what we can do there.
Yes.
Will it be clean enough for us to come up there?
You want me to go to the Washington Monument? All right, Mr. McIntosh.
Just real quick, and to go back to the request to have this feature more prominently on the website, we all get to an opportunity to talk with Ms. Bazinga before we go up to sort of to work on our strategy and have specific questions answered. So if you as the public have a question you want us to bring forward, get in touch with us before we go up, so in the next month or so, that way we can work that in. So,
Good suggestion.
This is a very ambitious list of activities and hopes that the city is expressing that the federal government can do for us. I do like the idea of getting it out into the public view where they can see it, and I'd also add the list we just sent up or sending up to the state legislature as well, to know that the role of the city council to solicit both state and federal support is active and progressive. So if we could do both of them when we publish it, thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion
For approval.
We have a motion second. Do we have a
Second.
second? Y'all wait just a second. Okay, all in favor, please vote. And that is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is C5. Hang on a minute. Yep. C5, if the secretary please read that one too.
C5, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2018 to 2019.
My question,
Didi, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
my question is, how's the general condition of the ballpark? I mean, when I read through this, and it told me about some leaks and some other things, and I'm like, okay, who's minding the house? Because it belongs to the city. And I hope that we don't get too far, over the viability of it, that we end up like when people don't take care of their house, that we end up having to go and spend a lot of money. So I'm concerned. All right.
Mr. Ralph.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of the City Council. Councilmember Adams, city staff have been meeting with DASH officials on a regular basis. Every year we meet, usually prior to the baseball season and at the end of the baseball season, to not only talk about what happened during the season, but also to talk about the condition of the facility. And we've been working with them on addressing those parts of the ballpark that are our responsibility under the lease agreement. And this is one where the DASH officials did make us aware that they've had some leaking into some of the spaces there at the ball field. We had an engineer come in and do an assessment, identify those areas, and propose recommendations for addressing those. And so that's the purpose of this amendment, is to appropriate some additional money to address those particular repairs. But we're continually working with them and making sure that we're aware of any facility issues that we're responsible for and that we're addressing those.
How old is this stadium?
I think it's going on, I think, eight years or so.
And I guess the other thing is, Mr. Rao, as you said, is to, I know with all the wet, the water, the snow, I know a lot of infrastructure is seeing water issues, but I think, as forecast Dr. Ladidi, we're going to see a lot of winter, wet weather, and I think we need to make sure we're proactive with the dash as to somebody should be inspecting the whole facility, because we're global warming and stuff is real, and I think our ballpark is going to be the first sign that we'll be able to see what it's going to do to our infrastructure, because it kind of sits in a bowl. So I think we need to get on top of this.
Well, two items that we're working on with the dash. We're going to work on a request for proposal document to do actually a facility condition assessment of the whole ballpark. We feel like there's enough age on the facility that we need to do that, and then from that, we're really going to start developing a multi-year capital plan so that we can anticipate when we may need funding to address major maintenance needs at the ballpark.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Burke?
Mr. Chairman, I thought we were supposed to have on a regular check these buildings for, just like you're talking about. For instance, if you go downstairs to our conference room, there's a leak coming through that ceiling.
Okay.
And Mr. City Manager.
Right down by our office.
Yeah, our office. There's a leak coming. And I've said from quite a few times, not only me, how are you really checking these facilities that's owned by taxpayers so we do not have to spend the kind of money to get them repaired? And you've gone over a few things. Just update us again.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Burke. We do have an ongoing maintenance program where we each year inspect all of our facilities and give them ratings and scores on all their major infrastructure. The recent change in leadership has found some areas where we've got some work to do to improve that listing, and we're doing that right now, and so that we can be as much as possible proactive before it's a crisis. This year has been a difficult year because of the amount of water, as Councilmember Adams pointed out. If it's possible to leak, it will leak this year, it seems like. But we are working on that so that we can make sure that all of our systems and structures have the maintenance, not just those major structures, but also major systems, but also the minor things, painting, carpet, things that need to be taken care of like you would with your house.
And we have a lot of flat roofs, and if you have flat roofs, we know, so we need to be trying to find out how can we and what we can do with these flat roofs to try to prevent that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Can I get a motion on this, please?
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion second, and if you'll please vote when the screen comes up. That is approved. Thank you very much. We will now go to C10. If the Secretary read this one, please.
Item C10, resolution authorizing modification and execution of a lease for surplus space in the Union Station building at 300 South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive under the provisions of NCGS 160A-272.
What I'd like to do on this one, because I know, Ms. Scipio, you're new and this is in your ward, I would like to have some discussion here, and I would like to hold it in committee for a month to get all the answers. I have some, and I know you may have some. But I do think it's important to go ahead and get an update, and any questions anybody has, let's get them on the table so we can get the answers back. So, Kirk, are you going to present this?
Be glad to answer any questions.
Right. Why don't you give us a 2-minute
okay.
rundown of what we're doing here?
Be happy to. In December 21st, 2015, the City Council authorized a lease with SG Atkins CDC, and in this arrangement, the property, 12,000 square feet, which is the top floor, would be leased to SG Atkins, and they would serve as the city's agent in turn in leasing that. SG Atkins came to the city back early last year with a proposal from Elizabeth's Pizza to lease approximately 3,000 square feet in the upper level for a pizza restaurant. It was discovered last fall probably that the kitchen area that they were anticipating was not going to be big enough, and they were going to need another suite, Suite 218, which contained almost another 1,000 square feet. In looking at the suites, we felt like that the historical nature of the building has some large restrooms and lounges that are really a super adequacy for a modern type building, but it was incorporated into the lease for Elizabeth's Pizza. So to try to work out something with Elizabeth's Pizza, it was proposed that they take on the additional suite, 218, with about 1,000 square feet, but to try to make it fair and workable for all considered, to not penalize them by having to pay all that extra money for the super adequate lounges and restrooms that are really not needed. So we just are coming back with you today for a lease that in all respects is the same as the last lease, except it's for more square footage. It's an extra suite. Due to that, the lease in dollar amount will actually increase in the first year from $12,000 to over $14,000. In the third year, it'll increase from $24,000 to over $28,000. And in the fourth and fifth year, the rental will increase from $36,000 to about $42,500. And if the first 5-year option is exercised, that would increase by about $8,000 a year. And if the second 5-year option is exercised, that would increase by about $9,000 per year. So we're coming back, really, again, basically the same thing that council approved before, but it's for more square footage and for an increase in the rental rate due to the increase in square footage.
There's a map in our thing. Can you pull it up on the screen? Can we do that? Anybody know how to do that? There we go. Okay, yeah, that's one. Yeah, okay. My question is the pink
Top is north.
The pink, yeah, the top is the north that looks out, look towards 40. The pink is what we were originally talking about. I guess the orange or the salmon is the addition.
That's correct.
What is the blue?
The blue is a future space that S.G. Atkins has entertained offers for another lease space. There have been some interest in possibly a coffee shop,
Okay.
Smoothie shop, something like that. So it's set up for a future retail space.
Questions? I've got a few, but I'll go around the room. You want to start?
I do.
It's your baby.
This is Union Station renovation has, if you haven't been to see it, it's just absolutely beautiful. And we want this to be a real showcase in the East Ward. When the building, the concept was developed, there was never a footprint of the kinds of businesses that should be in that, including the second floor in addition to the first floor. We have some interest, we have some ideas of other businesses to be in that site, in the whole building now. There is discussion, and we have some plans that need to be further developed. Just typical plans like property management, how do we secure it, who's going to maintain it, that kind of thing. So we need to have a comprehensive plan for the building as opposed to a piecemeal kind of thing. When you look at the building, the spot that Elizabeth Pizza has, the entry point for it would have to be from MLK because there's no other site within the lobby for it. A wonderful solution would be for them to take the baggage check area as opposed to the Union News area. So they would have that access into the pizza parlor directly. So I would like the council to table this lease until we have time to go in and look at all of the dynamics of that lease plus other leases that have been talked about.
And it's what was referenced, this is actually a three-story building. This is the third floor, and the other two are obviously below it. But you can't tell it if you're standing at I-40, you can only see one. If you're standing at Winston-Salem State, you can see all three off the backside. Okay, good point. Any other questions or comments? I do have some. I was at the committee meeting where we discussed this last time. I did not make the following council meeting where we voted on it. The two questions I have is, one, what is now going to be the dollar amount we're paying for the upfit? And two, what are the commission arrangements on the lease? I have been told, even though this is a 5-year lease with 2 options, that we are committed to paying the lease for 15 years. And I will tell you right now, I will not support a contract that pays for something that may happen in 15 years that's not contractually obligated by those. They're only signing a 5-year lease. They got options, but they don't sign about 5 years. I think we ought to pay a commission on 5 years. But anyway, I would like both those numbers brought back when time comes. I think you've raised a very valid point. They're using part of this. I know we're going to have city people on the first floor, I believe.
Yeah, the basement.
So, who unlocks the building in the morning, who locks it up at night, this, that, and the other. And one other question on this floor, and I have been in there pre-renovation, the lobby area where the old benches were is quite classic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that area is leasable, given that common area. So I would be curious, just some comments back on that.
We're discussing now the possibilities of things that could go in this building that really is a benefit to the community. And the thought of having kiosks could be in certain spaces. The lobby area, the waiting room area could lend it to that. These are all discussions that need to happen. One of the other things that's critical to this particular lease with Elizabeth Pizza, and I wasn't on the council when you agreed to it, but I believe there's an exclusionary clause in it that there could be no other food or beverage entities in the building, and I find that so limiting because we need food options in the East Ward, and just to have pizza is not acceptable for our community. We need a nice restaurant if someone wants to put that in there, maybe on the second floor. So I don't want us to be limited to what the community could really benefit from. So
Let's put that on the list. I think it'd be good to come back with a summary of the lease, just all the major points.
And other options.
Okay. And I think it'd also be good if you come back kind of where we are. I go by it kind of looks finished, but the windows, some of the windows aren't in. Just kind of an update from a construction standpoint on where we are. All right. With that, we'll hold in committee for a month and come back with those answers. Kurt, thank you very much. And that is all the consent items. We will now go to the general agenda items, and we have 4 of those, and we will begin with G1. If the secretary please read that one, please.
Item G1, resolution ratifying action taken on November 15th, 2018, and authorizing city manager or his designee to accept less than full repayment of construction loans to S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation.
Whoever would like to present, Marla, I guess you're up. You're up. If you'll give us maybe a 5-minute summary of what's going on, then we can talk back.
Yes, sir, will do. Good afternoon, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, Chair Clark, and the rest of the council.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So this particular item on the agenda is a 2-part item. The first is to ratify a decision that the council made in November via email and phone, which allowed the city to take less than full repayment on a construction loan that was made in connection with the construction of a home in the Ridgewood subdivision. That house had a construction loan for $120,000. The sale price on the home was $109,000, which gave the city a shortfall of $11,300 on the repayment of our construction loan. This has been a situation that has been encountered as we've done some urban redevelopment in both Ridgewood and we'll find in another part of the community, the East End subdivision area, where the cost to build is higher than the appraised value for the homes. And so we'll find some situations where we may not be able to recoup the full construction price. In this particular instance, we had a buyer who was looking at a closing date that was imminent. And so we came to you and asked your permission to allow us to take that shortage so that that home buyer could actually close on the purchase of the home, which they did do on November 16th. So the first part of the action is to ratify that initial approval that you all made in November to allow us to take less than the full repayment of our construction loan. That would be part one. Part two of this particular item is where we are asking that going forward, should we encounter some additional situations in Ridgewood and again even in East End subdivision for some houses that are currently under construction, if you will allow us permission again to do those homes in the same way should that become necessary, and then that way we don't have to come to you each time we have a closing for a sale to a buyer that's imminent.
Okay. Questions on this? G1, yes, ma'am. If you had to come back to us on another situation, it would change, the amount of money would change, correct?
Yes, ma'am, it could change based on how much that house sells for. So if we use the construction price of $120,000, the next house could conceivably sell for $116,000 and we would be $4,000 short. So the range would vary from what I'm understanding, at least in Ridgewood. Some of the appraisals are going up. So we stand a good opportunity to maybe have the full repayment of our construction loans going forward, but out of an abundance of caution and in recognition of your time and so forth, we thought we would try to be proactive and at least get the okay should it become necessary. We also have this situation in the East End as well, and I believe those houses may even come in a little lower in terms of appraised value than what we are seeing currently at Ridgewood. It was contemplated in the original developer agreement for East End that there could be a shortage and that we could have that authority to do so, but we were wanting to take this opportunity to reaffirm that in the event there's a shortage, it would also be a grant to the project rather to the home buyer. The original development agreement in East End had it set up where it would be a deferred forgivable loan to the buyer. We have found that that makes it difficult for a buyer to get a first mortgage because of the loan to value ratio. And so as we were trying to figure out what was the best solution, what seemed to make the most sense in order to get buyers in the home was for the city to take actually provide a grant to the project for that shortfall. So that amount may vary, just depends on what the house is listed for and what it's ultimately sold for.
Can you give me a range? Are we talking between, because you already know the price of the possible sale of the house, are we talking anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000? Or are we talking $10,000 to $50,000, $60,000? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
based on the average of the houses, the prices that we're asking for, what do you think it's going to be?
I would say easily between $10,000 and $20,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. McIntyre.
How many of these deals are we looking at doing? How many of these could we be on the hook for at $10,000 to $20,000 per?
Ultimately, well, so what we're asking for today, I want to give you a two-part answer, is about another 4 to 5 houses today, because that's what's currently under construction.
In Ridgewood?
No, it's a combination of Ridgewood and East End.
Okay.
The development agreements have actually covered as much as, or as many as 10 houses in the various developments. One of the things that we are talking over with the CDC is that we come back to the table and kind of revisit how we go about doing this. In one particular instance, the development agreement mentions that we will provide construction financing for a spec home, but then all of the other homes will have to be pre-sold in order for there to be construction financing. And so that has not been the case at this point, but we want to go back and revisit and maybe reaffirm that the process should be as originally contemplated in the development agreement, where in order for us to provide interim construction financing, that those houses have to be pre-sold going forward. So that way we know as soon as certificate of occupancy is secure, that person can turn right around, they have their mortgage financing waiting, and we can immediately be paid back whatever that amount is going to be. So that kind of lessens how long our money is out in these developments. So we're going to have to take a step back after the current houses are completed and say, how do we now revisit this and make it work the way that best serves the organization as well as the city?
Ms. Burke, do you have, or you
Yeah,
finished?
the
No,
ma-
good enough. Oh, and let him get it, then we'll come. Go ahead.
I wanted a bit more clarity on why this deal came up short. So our construction costs were 120 grand.
Yes, sir.
What was the contract price? What was the offer to purchase that was agreed on between buyer and seller?
$109,000.
That's the original. That's what we accepted
Yes.
as an offer.
Yes, that was the contract sales price.
I thought that was the appraisal price.
That too.
So the offer was made at 109. We said yes, and then the appraisal came along and confirmed.
That is my understanding. Now, Ms. Davis might be able to shed a little bit more light on that, but that is my understanding of the deal.
Okay, because from conversation earlier, I had heard that the appraisal came in low, and we had to back off because of the appraisal price. So maybe I misunderstood that.
Does anyone know, did the offer or the appraisal come in first? Does anybody know? We might be. Let's find that out between now and Monday night. My suspicion is the appraisal came in and the folks were willing to pay appraised value.
Well, and so my point on this is that we're going to lose this money on any of these moving forward because the delta between construction costs and now what is the established comp has been set. Okay, so we're not going to be able to go above that. No bank is going to say you can lend more on this on a dollar per square foot basis because here's our latest comp and here's what it is. So I mean, what we're talking about is confirming that we're going to lose somewhere between 10 and 20 per house going forward. And,
Well, I understand that there currently is another house under construction with a different kind of floor plan that is appraising in the 140 plus range. So I think it may depend on what's actually under construction. And as I understood it in talking with the CDC, that they are starting to see some slight increasing values or appraised values for at least what's currently under construction.
I would be pleasantly surprised if that were the case, but appraisers look backwards on what happened
Sure.
before and they project out in the future. So
Sure.
I think we're locking ourselves in to that here.
Okay, let me get everybody. Ms. Burke.
Yes, I hope we can stay excited about this project. A lot of work has been put in it. I did not agree when Ms. Newman shared about the burden of the buyer.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
felt that was positive. Also, in looking at this, pre-sale may be one way. I know some of the developers have said, I like to pre-sale my houses. And I guess what I would like at the next meeting, how excited are we still about this project? Because we have to keep the excitement going. We have to be the ones to motivate to get this going. And I think this area has been neglected, at least the East End, for so long. And I would like to see us move forward with this project.
Mr. Mayor and
Yeah.
Ms. Scipio.
Thank you. I'm totally supportive of our efforts in affordable housing. As you know, we've got 16,000 units we've got to develop in the next 8 years or so. And matter of fact, I heard a program today on NPR about just the crisis across the country. The only concern I've got is the way this resolution is written. It says accept repayment as needed on a case-by-case basis. That's pretty open-ended, and I think that's where Dee Dee was getting, Councilman Adams was getting as well. I'm just wondering if we should maybe have some kind of a limit in there.
I was going to come to that.
Not to exceed 20,000 or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Scipio, do you have a
Yes,
question?
I remember Ridgewood project that starting some years ago with houses, and it's continued now as a subdivision. I wonder how much did the tax revaluation that happened across the county impacted this neighborhood?
Okay.
because apparently the values of the houses didn't go up, or they may have gone up, but the revaluation may have taken them down.
Okay.
So that's still it's always a concern to me how these neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, were really hit by the county tax assessor and how they determined the value of those homes. Because it doesn't matter if we continue to have affordable housing, but if they're not going to be treated like other houses, we're going to always have properties for people who need to afford good houses not being valued properly. And I think we really need to make sure we're in partnership with our county representatives to make sure all of the land in this county is fairly assessed.
Thank you. I'm trying to summarize what I've heard here. First off, on this specific item, and by the way, this is, what number are we on? G1. G2 is the first cousin of this, so we're going to get some more information on all this. I think on this specific item, we would like to know the specifics as far as what was the contract amount, was the appraisal, and oftentimes when people buy a property, they get it appraised. Was the purchase price dependent on the appraisal or vice versa? I think that's a good point. And I'd like to know, and maybe this can come off the appraisal, kind of what the square footage is, and just some specifics on that. Secondly, I'm hearing a need to adjust the policy. I like the idea of pre-selling. That way, once we have that contract, and typically the person who purchases it will be pre-approved for the loan and this, that, and the other, then you can start the construction, get it done, and get it over with. We're going to learn in a minute that we did not start a project, get it done on time, and we're going to have a terrible repercussions because of that, and that's coming up here any minute now. But I think we need to, and I don't know if we have time to do that between now and the next meeting, but I think we do need a policy or procedures on how we go about doing all this. And I think part of that policy gets back to Ms. Adams' comment. I don't want to give anybody carte blanche to sell a house for whatever. I do think for the expediency on closing on houses that we could come up with something that says we would give the city manager authority from X up to X number of dollars.
Like we do with some other things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not to exceed. Now, I will say, hopefully going forward with, you have 3 or 4 still under construction, is that correct? Between the two places. Those we could have this issue. Now, going forward, if we got a policy we're going to pre-sell them, we ought to have a very good feel then on what they, can you get an appraisal on something that hadn't been built?
Yeah, you can pre-construction.
Pre-construction, okay. Yeah. So we'll have a pretty good feel if it's an issue going forward, but this is going to come up on 3 to 4, and I will look to y'all's recommendation. I think 15,000, 20,000 would be the upper limit the council, I think, would be comfortable with for pre-approval to the city manager. So anyway, Mr. McIntosh.
Just a response, and the pre-sale sounds wonderful, but it won't happen. Houses do not get sold in Winston-Salem on a pre-sale basis. It's very, very rare. People are not willing to buy off a floor plan and pictures. They want to walk through something and see it. So I wouldn't mind us attempting that, but I think actually accomplishing that would be very hard.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your expertise.
Nothing hurts a try but a failure. Keep that in mind. Nothing hurts a try but a failure. What I wanted to ask, though, I had asked Ms. Newman, we've done a pretty good job in selling houses to people in this community. We have them throughout this community, and I asked for a report to let you see we have done that community development department, and most of the folks are still in the houses, I believe.
Yes,
but to make it a fact, just give us a report. Sure. See. And I think we should do everything that we possibly can, bring back to this committee what we can do where we're falling short in order to make sure that this project can move forward. That is my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
And let me add one other thing to the list. I skipped over just what you asked for. It would be good if we could get some historical tax value appraisals, and I don't know if there's enough information in the immediate area, but you've asked a valid point. Let's, Mr. Garrity, see if we can get a little history there as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Chairman Clark, I was just going to add, the nature of affordable housing in this community and every community requires some subsidy from the government entity. You look at Habitat, they subsidize a lot of sweat equity and other reasons, but in order to make it work, if it didn't, if the market would allow it, the market would build the houses. So a 10 to 15% subsidy is not unusual in this. I think we just need to do a better job of articulating it and locking in our policies and procedures for it.
As the de facto conservative up here, I am not raising my ire for that very reason. If you could build a house in certain neighborhoods for a profit, the market would. And since I have been on this council, it has been my understanding there are certain places, particularly new construction, and new construction costs a lot more than existing houses. But if you put up new construction, that it is going to take a subsidy. And I think really what we're getting at is just documenting that and having a better understanding up front on it. But that is not news to me, at least.
Yeah, we started this conversation as two parts, and I would be comfortable seeing us go forward with the $11,300 on the one case that's already been completed and get that off the books, because I don't see that going anywhere. And then regarding future projects, which do concern me and how we handle those, I think we can have that discussion as staff recommends policies, whatever, that would allow us not to be in this position again, or allow the city manager to address them within limits. I'm not comfortable giving a carte blanche, open-ended agreement at this point, just with any cost overrides that we see on any houses that we build.
And I will say, I do appreciate the fact that Mr. McIntosh is on this council. He is an expert in this area, and I think he has a valid point as well, that I've never bought a house looking at a piece of paper. But anyway, Lee, I think we've heard some comments there. Can I get...
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just sat and I listened carefully. Ridgewood is in the Southeast Ward, and I agree with this council and this committee that we need to do our best to subsidize housing, particularly in terms of affordable housing. I want to be clear. There was another developer originally who took this ball, dropped the ball during the affordable housing crisis. Simon Jack and CDC stepped up to help to develop some of those houses in that community, and that's commendable. And I don't want this table or this conversation to go to a point where we're not recognizing them for taking the ball and trying to develop these properties. Now, as far as the county tax assessor, hopefully those properties will be reevaluated at the appropriate time. They were, in fact, Mississippi devalued, as it was all across the county for some odd reason. But I can tell you that this council, this city, has made significant investments into this community, whether that might be public infrastructure investments from the quarries, Salem Lake, police districts. So we've done our best to try to do our part in raising property values. We've got a wonderful director who I know who's watching the ship. We've got a wonderful CDC who I know cares about this community and will work to continue to provide quality, affordable housing. So I do agree that we need to set parameters. Once those parameters have been set, we still need to make it at the top of our list of things to do to provide quality, affordable housing, not just in downtown. I guarantee you this conversation will be completely different if we were talking about subsidizing $50,000 or $100,000 for a developer to do multifamily housing in downtown. But when we come to single-family homes in certain communities, we act like there's a large amount of money and this can't be done. Well, I say those two are equal. This community is just as important as downtown. I'm not saying anybody's saying anything contrary, but I like the fact that we're moving forward with this conversation. So thank you, Ms. Newman. Thank you to the CDC. And we're looking forward. I certainly support this item, and we're looking forward to continue to provide quality housing, not only in the East End, but in the Ridgewood, in the southeastern portion of the city.
Is there a time limit on this? Do we need to move it forward, or can we wait a month to get this information?
There's no time restrictions on this
If
one.
it's okay with everybody, I'm going to hold this. And by the way, Mr. Taylor, I don't hear any objection.
Well, I just had to say it, though.
But I hear some confusion. But anyway. So we'll hold it in committee for a month and get those questions answered. Ms. Burke?
Now, this man has passed. Now, Mr. Taylor, the oil man, he got out of the oil business and he became a developer. When he put those houses over there off of Coliseum Drive, I said, now, how are these people paying for all those expensive houses? He said, I'm pre-selling them. He said, at first, I built them. But then I started, you got to before I will build a house. So they still do it, some of the folks, and I do respect your comments concerning Mr. McIntosh. But we're going to need to do everything we possibly can to get this project moved. And what Mr. Taylor, he can speak clear for himself. He is saying the things that we do to make things happen for this city to look like it looked today downtown. It would not look that way if we had not been agreeable with you who represent downtown to move forward with the project. And Mr. City Manager, you're sensitive to all of our 200 and some citizens and what they need in this community.
All right, so that's going to be held in committee for a month, and we'll get those questions answered. We will now go to G2, and by the way, this is a continuation of the discussion from G1, but a little bit broader, but if the Secretary please read this one.
Item G2, consideration of deobligation of uncommitted home funds from program year 2014.
Mr. Chairman, can you call me first for a second for this
I
one?
will call on Mr. Garrity. I don't think she'll forget.
Before we get started, I did want to just talk in general about this item. I don't want it to be perceived like we are piling on the CDC. The ball was dropped on this one, and you'll see it's an $811,000 ball of money for affordable housing that we have been deobligated. Ms. Newman will go through that in a second. It's old money, but it's not the fault of the community. It is the fault of staff that's no longer here. None of the staff that's representing the department were here when this happened, but ultimately staff is the one who should have come forward to this council and said 3 years ago and said the time is running out. There are lots of reasons why these projects weren't built, but I do want to make it clear that it's staff ultimately who should have come forward and said something, and they didn't to anybody, including myself.
So if we could get a presentation.
Sure. Again, thank you for your ear this afternoon. On this particular item, G12, again, it's noted as the deobligation of home funds. So in October of 2018, we were notified by HUD that due to two activities not being completed on time, $811,000 of our home allocation would be deobligated. At the time when I received a call from HUD, they were making mention of taking that from our 2018 allocation. Of course, we asked for some time to do some research so we could get our arms around what exactly the situation was, but also look into whether there were some options in terms of where that deobligation actually was funded from, so where those funds would be shifted from rather than 2018. A little history on the two activities. One is in connection with Ridgewood, and one is in connection with East End. I'll take the Ridgewood one first because that one occurred first. At the time this particular development was started that involves this activity, an organization called Unity Builders was the developer. During the course of their developing the subdivision, the contractor died. So at that time, two houses were actually under construction at the time of his death. The S.G. Atkins CDC was asked to step in, take over the development of Ridgewood. However, those two houses were taken out of that agreement because they were already under construction, so that all of that which was undeveloped would then go to the CDC, and they would kind of pick up the ball and run with it from there. The two houses that were under construction, the city took it upon ourselves to find a builder to finish the construction of those two houses. One was completed, no problem, on time, not an issue. The second house, which ended up being one of the triggers here with HUD, the construction was completed in January of 2017. The deadline to have these houses completed was June of 2017. And in a completion sense, in this instance, for HUD was not only construction completed, but the home sold and the project closed out. So the construction was completed in January. However, there were some outstanding punch list items, and a dispute arose between the city staff and that builder about completing those punch list items. In the meantime, a buyer put a contract on the house in June of 2017, and the clock is ticking. It wasn't until the buyer basically refused to close until those punch list items were completed did they actually finally get completed, as staff said they should have. Unfortunately, that did not occur until August of 2017, so 2 months after the deadline for HUD. So that is the situation in Ridgewood. So again, those two houses were actually completed at the behest of the city and a different contractor. On the East End development, That also had a June 2017 completion date. No houses were actually completed during that time. We did expend some initial monies to get the process started. I understand that there were a number of different things that were taking place during the time of the contract that we had for completion of those 4 units in terms of negotiating with the credit union about potentially buying out the lots and some redesign conversations and some other factors were in play as the clock was ticking. It just turns out, again, June of 2017, again, the houses were not completed. And so then last year is when we were notified by HUD that because those 2 items were not completed by the deadline, that then is what led to the deobligation. Assistant City Manager Logan Ford and I have had numerous conference calls with the local HUD representatives. We made a request for technical assistance with HUD headquarters to try to help us work through this. You know, we explained that there were various things that were at play during those time frames to see if there was any way we could work out something, some kind of extension or what have you. Ultimately, headquarters said no. It was basically, this is what is going to take place based on the regs. The regs are really clear. So, again, we had also asked if there was a way we could use other dollars that were home dollars that could be deobligated rather than the current year's money, because we had already started issuing contracts to our service agencies and other organizations who were relying on these 2018 dollars that were allocated. Thankfully, HUD, again, our regional office corresponded with the headquarters in Washington, D.C. They did agree to allow us to offset the funds from 2014 funds that were not committed already. And so once the shutdown is over, we should any day expect the letter from HUD with the requisite documents that we would need to execute to actually take those dollars, that $811,000 from 2014 funds, which means all grantees for 2018 are covered. No one will be impacted at all by this action. And because of the things that were transpiring, different impediments, death you can't control, other things around planning for the site and potential acquisition of property that was contemplated for a different purpose. One of the things that we are bringing before you also today is a proposed policy that would, if you agree, would be included in all contracts, be it service contracts, development agreements, and the like, that would say, understand going in that we will be monitoring such that if a certain amount of service has not been rendered, a certain amount of progress in a development has not taken place by a certain point in time, that the city has the right to bring you in and have a conversation about recapturing and reallocating those monies within the time frame so that we don't have a situation where the clock runs out on us again. And so that proposed policy is included with this particular item for your consideration.
To finish the story, the 4 houses that they were going to build in the East End, were they ever built?
A couple of them are under construction now.
Okay. And those are the ones we talked about in the previous item.
That would be reflected in the previous item.
All right, Mr. Taylor.
Just a quick question. The funds that we were talking about from 2014, are these physical funds or physical money that's sitting in the bank account somewhere that we'll have to return? If you can just explain what that means.
Yes, sir. So what we get from HUD is basically a line of credit. And so when funds are expended by organizations, they invoice the city does a drawdown against the line of credit, reimburses the organization. So we don't have any physical transfer of dollars. It's just what would have been available to us in a line of credit will not be available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams.
Yes. Again, thank you so much. And the staff in the Community Development Department. The procedures recommend the funds be transferred, the one on page 2 of this item that's given to us, for the recapturing Nope, yep.
Now, you on the policy?
I'm on the policy.
Policy, okay.
Yeah.
Page
The one thing that I would like to see, Mr. Garrett, is I need a more detailed analysis of the corrective and preventive action. In the past, I have asked for this, as well as the Mayor Pro Tem, that we cannot always assume, and for me, and you all know, I told you, the line is in the sand now. Because if we get one more thing, I tell people when you leave a job in corporate America, you blame that person for everything. You got 6 months to a year to throw that person under the bus for everything from the bathroom stopping up to the roof falling. It doesn't matter.
I'm going to blame this one on Mr. Montgomery.
That's who did it. But as we move forward from today, we are going to be held responsible for this, all of us. So I would like to see the details of the procedure, the corrective action, the guidelines, preventive and corrective action, whatever it is that we're doing that HUD told us we had to do, assisted with how we had to do this going forward. But we need to see this. It's a policy, but it's a procedure. So we need to see this. Some of us, the council does, so to see if we are touching everything that we need to see. Nothing hurts fresh eyes. Even though you can do a job every day for 30, 40 years, you are prone to miss something that somebody who's never done it would say, hey, what does this mean? So I'm asking you to make sure you get that to the council and to me, especially being chair of the community development. I also want to know, Mr. Garrity, are we missing any critical staff positions or positions that should be looked at now, that we're moving in this direction, and with the funding of HUD and everybody else now scrambling for money for affordable housing and other programs, are we missing a key position that we should have to help us understand how we work with our partners, the developers, nonprofits, when it comes to this housing piece? Because we're not the experts totally. You got any ideas?
I've got a lot of ideas, but then
You thought it was rhetorical.
staff is working
No, it
on
wasn't
that.
rhetorical.
They're also we're also in the midst of bringing in a retired city manager who's got quite a bit of experience to kind of consult with staff in community development, and Ms. Logan Ford. We've already done a couple internal audits on there and implemented those. So we are also, as you can imagine, they are checking with our finance department. They are going through every single federal grant we have to make sure that this cannot, as you just said, cannot happen again. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McIntosh,
So I'm obviously disappointed that we're in the position that we are and taking this hit and losing a line of credit. That I'm going to agree with Mr. Clark earlier what he said. You know, we want to see affordable housing succeed, but it's not a market-driven operation. There has to be subsidy, and I think everybody around the table here is committed to supplying that subsidy. But as Mr. Montgomery would have said if he were at the table here, it has to be intentional. And we're not dealing with a situation now that is intentional. We're reacting, and we're making up for errors that were made. And in discussing this with staff and other council people, I think the gravity of it has hit. I mean, I don't think this is being taken lightly. I hope not, because if we're going to make a dent in affordable housing, we need to use every dollar as wisely as possible. This is not a situation where we're using money wisely. So, good luck.
Yes. I have spoken about accountability, monitoring all these programs, and make sure that we go from A to B with a clear understanding of where we need to be going. And I have also said that the city is a big business, and we need to manage it, and all departments need to manage it, and everybody needs to want to work. And when they say that word team, and I've said it to the city manager, I say it's really not team, because team looks out after each other. Team makes sure things are done. Team will not hold things in one office and not pass it whenever they get good and ready. They're more accountable to the taxpayer, and I do believe that the city manager has heard us, and with the staff that he's brought on, that we need to see these kinds of changes. And your committee needs to also have keeping us up to date with that community development department.
there's no action required here. This is just bad news and bad
Or
news.
information.
I would offer two comments. One is, Ms. Mazingo just left. Is this something, the mayor's going to be in D.C. in 2 weeks. We're going to be there in 2 months. Is this, and Lee, I guess I'm going to look at you. Is this something we can go
No,
and
I
tell
asked
them
that-
what nice people we are, and can we please have our money
Well,
back?
I asked that question early on,
Okay.
and honestly, I mean, we have a good relationship, staff does, with HUD, and they're very sympathetic. But these rules,
Rules is rules.
and they're not, and I don't think they could change the law to do that. I mean, we staff in the department knew and didn't do anything.
Okay. And the last comment I make, and I'm going to quote Ms. Burke and Mr. Taylor, just made comments a minute ago, and I think you used the term keep the ball rolling or something like that, and you talked about, what this really has done is suck $800,000 out of keep the ball going. That's money that we don't have to build the next 5, 10, 20 houses, whatever it may be. And that's really the hurt here is there are 10 or 15 families out there that don't have a house that could have. And we can't put names on them because it's kind of an opportunity loss. But I certainly hope we will learn from it. I'm not going to yell and scream at the staff. I guess I'm in a good mood today. But, shame on us. Let's don't let it happen again. Mr. Bessie, you seem to have a comment on your.
Trying to synthesize the various groups in conversation and issues, I am still not sure I know whether the basic solution in this case would be that if this project can't get done in time, we need to switch to money that's allocated for it. And that was failure on the part of the staff to advise us that we need to do that. Or was the matter of this project could have been completed on time, but was not, and that would point to a different.
Yeah, that's a new builder.
Do we have a conclusion on that, or that's something?
I would venture to guess that based on all of the other moving pieces that were in play at the time, it probably would have made more sense to try to find a different source of funds. Now, how that works on the regulatory side with HUD, I can't speak fully to that at the moment, but certainly a source of funds that did not have the same type of time restrictions would have probably been better allocated to a project of that nature at the outset, actually.
The reason I think it's good was because we, at least it's my recollection that it's not unusual for us to say that we can't get project A that you think will be done, can we change what is approved? And so that, is.
Good point. Good point. And Ms. Garrett, I do welcome the, let's look at everything on the books, be sure we're okay there. Ms. Scipio.
Just wanted to know, did I hear correctly or did I hear it at all? These were 2014 funds.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other funds in our line of credit that we know are safe and secure?
That's what the
And that,
staff's checking.
did we say that?
Yes.
We know that? That
Yep.
we're okay so far?
Yeah, yes, ma'am, we're okay, because we have projects already on the books where funds have been committed that are coming out of those prior year pots of money. Those funds are fine. The only time when we have a situation where something may be at risk is in this particular situation where we didn't meet a deadline and HUD comes back to us. But at this juncture, everything else is good and is safe and on track.
Okay. Thank you. And the staff's going to confirm that. Thank you. That was, I should say bad information, but information. We'll now move to G3. By the way, I have 2 more items in 20 minutes, and I have never been over, so hopefully we can get this done.
Define number.
In the new year.
In the new year. The whole year. The whole year.
Conservative way to think about it.
Item G3, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee Quarterly Report.
Okay. Ms. Pender, come on up. I would comment, and I do want you to recognize your committee in a minute, but I also want to make a comment that we got an email from the mayor the other day. He's putting together a new citizens committee for the 2018. Have we got the right dates? And if there's anyone out there in TV land that has an interest or council members, I know he's looking for some names from us for the next committee. So, Ms. Pender, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes. Good evening now, I believe.
Good evening.
To the chair of this committee, Mr. Clark, and the mayor, Alan Johns, and my council member, Dr. Vivian Burke. I am here to present the final report. It's on there, the quarterly report, but the final report for this committee. As you mentioned, there will be others considered for the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And I would like to recognize the members that are here this evening. Shanita Barber.
Why don't y'all stand if you're on the committee? I see Mr. Cotterell's here and Mr. Fredericks is here.
Ms. Barber.
Mr. David Cotterell.
Yep, thank y'all.
And Tom Fredericks. And just a quick short story. When I got the call from Ms. Barnes that the mayor wanted me to serve on the committee, I said, great. And then she proceeded to say, he wants you to chair the committee. And I said, you know I can't refuse the mayor. But I thank Dr. Burt for recommending me. I live in the Northeast Ward, yes, Randon Pender, 5621 Novak Street, Northeast Ward. And so I appreciate both of you seeing something in me to say, yes, she can do this. And so with the help of Mr. Ben Rao over there and Meredith, I see sitting in the back, we got it done. So a few talking points. The Citizens Bond Oversight Committee began its work April of 2015 to oversee the implementation of $139.2 million of bond projects that were approved by the voters in November of 2014. The committee was created to carry out the following duties and responsibilities, and there were 6. The review of the city manager's plan relating to the issuance of the $139.2 million in bonds for projects approved by the city of Winston-Salem voters on November 4th, 2014. To ensure the contracting meets the city's priorities regarding participation of local vendors and the minority women business enterprises in implementing the bond-funded projects. To monitor the timeliness of the implementation of the city manager's plan, to review the appropriation and spending plan of bond proceeds, to provide regular reports to the mayor and city council on the progress of the bond projects, and 6, to perform such other tasks as the mayor and city council may direct. Since the committee's last report in January 2018, the total percent committed or spent has increased 10 percentage points from 70% to 80%. There remains a number of large projects, including the renovations of the Vivian H. Burke Public Safety Center, improvements to Happy Hill Park, Meadowlark Drive widening, sidewalk reconstruction and repairs, the city's participation in the Business 40 Corridor improvements, and these projects should be constructed within the next 12 or 18 months. Attachments A of the committee's report provides a status update of the bonds projects approved to date. And I believe you have those attachments. The committee is pleased to report the actual MWBE participation for completed formal projects totaled 25%, as opposed to the goal of 17%, 8 percentage points higher. The formal projects and value of the contracts awarded to MWBE general contractors represented 64% of the total value of the contracts awarded. Attachment B of the committee's report provides actual MWE participation for projects that have been completed and officially closed out. The committee supports the City Council's decision to lower the threshold for the formal bidding to $100,000. Due to this change, future projects costing $100,000 or more will include formal MWE goals. And this concludes my talking points. So this report serves as the final report, as previously mentioned. The members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee have enjoyed serving the mayor and city council and the citizens of Winston-Salem in this important oversight role for the past 3.5 years. The opportunity to tour and share the bond projects with the community was an important role that we were honored to fulfill. We appreciate the professionalism and the support from the city staff and the leadership of our co-chairs, both of which were essential to the committee's success. And thank you all very much, committee, and thank you very much, Assistant City Manager Ben Rao.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any questions from the staff? Mr. Bessie?
Yes, I was told that they couldn't hear my questions a minute ago, so I'll lean this way. First, I want to thank Chair Pendon and the members of your committee for all your work. Appreciate it. Two questions. One, regarding the report, there are a number, particularly in the transportation streets and sidewalks, there are a number of unfinished projects. Do you have available a list of the projects that are not yet completed and the status and timetable for each of those? Or is that something that staff?
Well, as mentioned in the report, 12 to 18 months. And as far as the list, yes, Mr. Ben Rao has that list.
All right, thank you. And the second question, I see that on your final monthly report, you have 6 members. Didn't we start out with 9? Did we lose some?
We did. We sure did. Let's see, one, there was a personal issue. And then within the last year, there were, I'll say, work-related situations or possibly relocation. I can't remember now. They were not able to continue their tenure.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just very briefly, I want to add my thanks to the chairman and members of the committee. I think the work of this committee, along with the fact that the staff did such a great job of getting this work done, doing exactly what we said we were going to do in 2014, probably one of the factors that we had such great success in 2018 in getting another bond issue approved by the voters, I might say overwhelmingly. So thank you. I think you all played a key role making the city a better place and then going forward to continue that momentum. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
a great opportunity.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Burke.
I need to say when Councilwoman Scipio came on this council, she said she didn't know it was so much work to be done. And when we have volunteers who come, and some of them have dropped out because of other commitments, it is really a big job. Yeah. And volunteerism we appreciate and everything you've done, because it takes all of us to make this city a place where we all can enjoy 100%.
I got you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garrett.
I wanted to follow up with Councilmember Bessie's question. We did a good job, but it's my full intent to do even a better job with this round. We are working, Mr. Rao and I, along with all our staff, on what I'm calling the playbook for the bonds this time. That playbook includes all of the new projects as well as any outstanding projects from the last referendum. We're going to move faster than last time. You noticed on this agenda today 3 change orders for architect for phase 2. So you will, once we have that playbook done, which we're close on right now, we'll first meet with each one of you individually. We want to make sure the schedule and the scope meets your needs and your constituents' needs, and then we'll bring it to this committee to look at as a whole. But we are moving faster than last time.
Ms. Saunders, I see you sitting out there. Would you mind, you can send in a memo form on when you expect to sell bonds, kind of a cash flow analysis for us? Thank you. Okay, we will now go to, what number are we on? G4. Secretary, please read that one.
Item G4, information on proposed uses of $20 million in limited obligation bond financing.
Mr. Rao, this is just for information today, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll please give us some information.
Yes, sir. So before you this evening is an information item. Back in January of last year, when the council was conducting its planning for a potential bond referendum, at the time, staff presented a debt model that showed that with a 4-cent increase in the tax rate, that the city could afford to issue $122 million in general obligation bonds and still have about $20 million in additional debt capacity that could be used for other financings like limited obligation bonds, which we've used for projects like the renovation of the Benton and also the redevelopment of Union Station. Over the course of last year, there have been community stakeholders who have brought forward some emergent needs. Two of them that I want to just very quickly note. First off, the Forsyth County Commission obviously has been going through discussions about the construction of a new courthouse. As to support that, they're also looking at constructing a parking deck. County management has been working with city management on a proposal for how we can jointly finance a new parking deck to support that facility. And then this past November, Mayor Joines and Chancellor Elwood Robinson from Winston-Salem State University announced that the university would no longer pursue purchase of Bowman Gray Stadium, but that the city would propose investing $9 million in improvements to the facility. And then there have been other community stakeholders have brought forward some other needs, and so I'm going to very quickly just list those, and those are found in your information item. So as I mentioned, Bowman Gray Stadium, the $9 million there. The city's share of a courthouse parking deck, $5 million. And then some additional emergent needs, improvements to Liberty Plaza to support the new Callidium site, $2 million. Acquisition of the former U.S. Bankruptcy Court site, $2 million. Some investments in Bellevue Recreation Center and Park, $1 million. And then $1 million in contingency. So these are potential uses of the $20 million that would be available based on our debt model. I'm just going to very briefly hit on just an overview of each of these projects, starting with Bowman Gray Stadium. The $9 million there really would be intending to address some major maintenance needs, but also to help with better identifying the stadium as the home of Winston-Salem State football. But we would do, make improvements there that would benefit both of our major tenants there, not only Winston-Salem State, but also Winston-Salem Speedway, Inc. So the replacement of restroom facilities, concession stands, repairs to the east and west press boxes, field house, regrading the football field, which is a significant priority, and also looking at resurfacing the racetrack. We are proposing to use the construction management at risk method on this project because it will require a great deal of coordination to do this work in between the football and racing seasons. We'll be bringing an item to council here in the future to retain a construction manager to help us do that. And basically the way that process works is this construction manager at risk will work with our architect, and when the plans get to about 60 to 80% complete, they'll negotiate at what's called a guaranteed maximum price, meaning that if the project exceeds that, then the contractor would be absorbing those expenses. If it comes under that, then there could be discussions about additional improvements or sharing in the savings. The next item is the city's share of a courthouse parking deck. The proposal that's being discussed, I believe, amongst the county commission and staff, the projected cost is about $13.2 million. The city's share of that would be 35.4%. It would be a 660 space parking deck. The city would share in the 101 public spaces that would be available, and then would also utilize 183 spaces, which we'll need in light of the continued use of the 4th and Church parking deck to support development in Innovation Quarter. So a total of 233 spaces for city benefit. So the $5 million there would basically be equivalent, would basically be using the city's debt capacity to make debt payments to the county. They would actually finance the construction, and we would pay our share of that debt. The next item, the improvements to Liberty Plaza to support the Callidium site, $2 million there. The Children's Museum and SciWorks merged a couple of years ago into Callidium, and they now have two campuses, Callidium North and Callidium Downtown. This $2 million would be used to make improvements to Liberty Plaza. I believe Liberty Plaza is kind of envisioned as the front door to the new Callidium building located there on 3rd Street at the former Forsyth County Sheriff's Office building. The $2 million potentially would be used for demolishing the office pods that are located there, as well as new sidewalks, brickwork, and landscaping, really improvements to the site. The next item is acquisition of the former U.S. Bankruptcy Court site. That's about a little over a 1.5 acre site there off of Liberty Street. Right now, the property owner is in discussions with the Conservation Fund to acquire that, but there is work in visioning being done between the Conservation Fund and the Creative Corridors Coalition to potentially develop that site into open space. The land is the site of the former farmer Peter Oliver, who was enslaved, joined the Moravian community in the late 18th century, and purchased his freedom working as a potter. Based on the early concepts of the development of the property, the open space would include the current strollway, sidewalks, lighting, landscaping, and interpretive walls. But the $2 million that's being described here, the potential use of our debt capacity would be to simply acquire the property and demolish the U.S. Bankruptcy Court building. Additional funding would have to be identified for the actual development of the site into open space. And then the next item here would be $1 million for improvements to Bellevue Recreation Center and Park. Bellevue Recreation Center is located in southeast Winston-Salem off of Burgundy Street. Improvements would include a new addition to support a community meeting room for rentals and community meetings inclusive of audiovisual capabilities, for teleconferencing, entertainment, and educational opportunities. Just a real significant renovation of that facility. The money would also be used to expand the playground to include improved equipment, seating, and shade, as well as the replacement of the existing picnic shelter. So those are specific potential uses there. And then finally, the remaining $1 million would be retained as contingency, which could be appropriated to support those particular uses or could be appropriated to address another emergent need. But appropriation of those funds would be addressed and approved on a case-by-case basis by council. If council so directs staff to move forward with some of these uses, then staff would bring back a budget amendment in February to actually appropriate some of these funds. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Ralph, someone wanted to add to this list. Should they contact you?
They can, and we would staff would then bring back a new proposal.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Adams?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Clark. That was one of the questions I was going to ask.
I thought so.
Oh, yeah. The other thing that I would like to know is because most of us have been communicated to about Bowman Gray. Most of us know that project very well, and I think we're all in agreement on that one since we weren't able to sell the school outright, the Bowman Gray Stadium. The one about the courthouse for me, and as well as Caladium, and as well as the bankruptcy court site. I would like more information on those. I would also like to know what other projects, just give us some suggestions of things that others could suggest. And how did we come and arrive at the 20 million? I know there's another piece, but my thing is, I knew about the 9 million. I knew about the park, the Bellevue, but I didn't know about kind of these other sorts of things. And again, I go back to, you know, what I'm going to stay true to. I love it when we make the community viable, full of life, excitement, pretty. But I know some of you on the council and those in the audience have heard me say before, there are going to be some things on here that I won't be able to support. That's why I need to see a new list. If it's not going to happen for the betterment of the poorer communities, the communities I represent, and the poorer communities that I don't but expect me to represent, I need more information. I need more information. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Scipio?
Do we have an idea of what the existing Children's Museum building is going to be used for? Are they keeping that? Or everybody's moving into the new space? Do we know?
We have the executive director, Clydian.
Come on up.
Hear from her.
If you'll please give your name and address for the record, and if you can comment on her question.
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Dampier. I'm the Executive Director at Caladium, located at 400 West Haynesmill Road in Winston-Salem, 27105. And as you may know, the Caladium North building is currently a capital lease from the county, so they own that property. But the Caladium Downtown building is owned by the Board of Directors. And to be completely honest and frank with you, the board discussion at this point has been there will be no discussion until we have full funding for the building and have made a decision on the building downtown. in the new space. So at this point in time, there has been no decision about what will happen with the building. Certainly there are options. The board could choose to keep it. The board could choose to sell it.
I want to ask, how diverse is the people who will participate, and what areas are, you may need to get this for me, and what areas are they coming from, and who is the board of directors who's making the decision?
Sure. I do have a little bit of information with me here today that I'm happy to leave with you, but you may want some more specific information, and I'm happy to do that, and give that to all of you if you're so interested. Sure. So what I can tell you is that when Callidium decided to merge, there was an intentional effort for us to become more diverse. One of the reasons that we are so excited about the potential of this move downtown is because of the accessibility. Both of our sites currently, even though one of them is downtown, are not easily accessible by the bus routes necessarily. The site that we have now, being almost in the center of downtown, gives us great accessibility. One of the things that we did was really focus and concentrate on diversifying our board of directors. So I can tell you that now our board of directors also matches the visible minority ratio here in Winston-Salem and in part of Forsyth County. So we intentionally brought on some more diversity onto our board as we were making decisions, and that has become something that we are much more focused on and being intentional about. We also sent senior level staff through a racial equity cohort process and are beginning training and looking at that intentional practices that we can do internally and externally to make us more diverse and to look more like our population. We also, in calendar year 2018, started a program called Museums for All, which is a program that is hosted by the Association of Children's Museum that intentionally targets folks who have EBT cards to come in for a lower priced admission. So anyone who has an EBT card can come to the museum now any day, every day for $3 per person versus the usual $10 per person rate. And we had almost 4,000 people in calendar year 18 who participated and visited the museum through that program. We have also now paired that this year with a Theater for All program, very similar, to encourage people to come and visit peppercorn theater shows and to be able to get a reduced admission so that they can have access to that type of programming as well. In terms of a little bit about our numbers, we saw just over 207,000 people last year, and what we know is that about 58% of those come from low-income Forsyth County zip codes. And we defined those zip codes as those with a higher percentage of residents with income below 50% of the poverty level in 2016 than the state level of 8.7%. And we got that from citydata.com. So that is how we right now are looking at how our group is coming. Again, this council has been super supportive of Callidium operationally for years and years. We thank you for that support. We're excited about this opportunity to be in the center of downtown and to really be able to be an organization that can supplement the schools and not be focused on some of the mandates and things that they have, but really allow science and literacy and passionate learning come out of all people in our community who want to find that passion and learn in a different way. We're excited about this partnership between the city, county, and Callidium.
If you'll please get that information to our staff. Yes, ma'am.
And at times when fireworks would come here and they wanted something, they would put together little short-term diversity programs, and I want to really see your program. I really want to see those figures, and it's so important.
Okay. Would you like me to leave this sheet with you tonight and then provide additional information?
Mr. Rao, get up. Okay. I'm going to go around the table.
I just want to throw in here, I sit on the board of directors for Callidium, as does Chief Katrina Thompson and Al Andrews. And at the beginning of the merger of these two organizations, it was very strongly voiced from all sides that this needed to be an effort that was all-inclusive to the city. This was not a ward program. This is something that is going to benefit the entire city. We're trying to become a high-tech place, and if we're not going to encourage and enlighten children to go learn about science, we are not going to meet those kind of goals. We need to open our education system up to that early on.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just very quickly, this is a solid package, I think. Bowman Gray. I wish we could have consummated the sale to Winston-Salem State, but because of a lot of extraneous goings on there, he couldn't. But this is, I think, a great way to work with the university and with Winston-Salem Racing to really make that a great facility. I'm excited about adding 284 parking spaces into the city here, and at 17,000 roughly a space, that's a really good bargain. And so I appreciate the county, Mr. Elamine, for allowing us to join in with you on that project there. I agree with the comments here. It does clearly, I think, could benefit low-income individuals here. The acquisition, the bankruptcy side is a timing one, obviously. There's an opportunity in front of us that we can really get that site and hopefully figure out a way to celebrate Peter Oliver and his legacy here in the city. And then, of course, I don't need to talk about Bellevue. It's an important facility here, and the needs to rework that or perhaps even expand that. So I'm excited about the projects and the balanced plan that you brought to us.
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly.
Go ahead.
I certainly support all of the projects in this particular package, but I wanted to sort of lift up one in particular, Bellevue, that the mayor just sort of queued up. The overall plan for the Bellevue Community Center is to sort of create a center where the people in the community can go, live, work, relax, the whole nine. We have particular programs there at Bellevue. We have SOAR program that works with former offenders, provides opportunities for them. There's another side of that provides grantee funding to community and nonprofit organizations who want to do the work in the community. The second part of the program is Youth Build. It takes young people between 16 and 24. We teach them a trade. We've also talked about doing some coding there, but the truth of the matter is that facility has outgrown its use. So we might go in and renovate it. I might come and petition this council to just build a new facility where we can provide all of these programs and uplift the community. So I just thank you for your support of that, and I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that so people can know what to expect who live in the Bellevue community, but those at large who definitely are supporters.
Okay.
May I just say that? Now, Bellevue happens to be one of our most historical black communities, and it has been neglected, and that's where history started.
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as the stadium, I think it's good we're going to do that. But I thought it was really terrible when we put in Wake Forest and WSSU, and then I knew them people in Raleigh was going to trick us. See, it should have been something in there. We don't sell Wake Forest unless we sell WSSU. And had we had something there like that, we wouldn't be talking today. And I felt that the folks in Raleigh who were so demeaning, and also those sports people, the race car people, they didn't want WSSU to have it. They kept griping and carrying on and complaining. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I told somebody, I said, they're good for thinking they can play the east side of the city. And Mr. City Manager, that was a big disappointment for us in this community.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful to get a little more information on all of these. A couple of things. One, I think a completeness. The one I have the biggest concern with is the bankruptcy court. I'm having a hard time spending $2 million to buy a building and tearing it down when a block away we just bought some raw land. I have supported, I think, every park that's come here. I'm also having a hard time, and then I've learned tonight that doesn't include the park. That's just the building. That's money thrown away because we're going to tear down what we're buying. I think I've supported every park project that's come, but when we talk about the golf course, Long Creek went out of business. We got a lot of acreage. But this one, I'm having a hard time thinking who's going to walk there to use it. The neighborhoods are some distance away. And to put a nice park for children beside the interstate, I'm having a hard time with that as well. But anyway, I know this is in your ward. I'll look forward to more information. The other thing is on that one, I would like complete information as well as some of these others on, okay, that's just part of it. What else are you looking for? Same thing on Caladium. What is the total scope of that project? Where does it stand? Are there other commitments we're going to be needing to make further down? And I would say, for the record, I am on the Board of Trustees at Winston State University, and I think this is the right answer. I told the chancellor to his face, he asked me, should we buy the stadium? I said, you want to buy a 90-year-old stadium that sits on top of a landfill. Now, what was your question again? I think the answer, because we have two dual users, is to make it first rate and have two great organizations use it. So I think that was a good compromise that came up. And just on the other part, Bellevue, I've heard needs out there. And I would also recommend for any of the council members, if there are other items that you think need to be addressed in your ward, to put them on here. Last comment on the parking deck, and I know we have one of our county commissioners here. I don't know what the timeliness of that is, but I do know if it's built soon enough, we will not have to spend $500,000 on a temporary parking to replace the parking we're losing in the 4th Street. So I think that's a real win-win there. Mr. Bessie, I see your hand up.
Yes, thanks. And I hate to be Danny Downer here, but unfortunately I cannot say that I think this is a balanced package, and it was not prepared with broad participation. We went through an enormous amount of citizen and public input in preparing our bond packages each time, and got carefully balanced packages as a result. And we're talking about spending $19 of $20 million out of our other debt capacity on projects like that with minimal input.
Good point.
None of this goes to affordable housing. None of it goes to transportation improvements. None of it goes to stormwater management. All areas we're getting a lot of demand from. And honestly, if I went to the folks in my district and held meetings around the Southwest Ward and said, name your priority projects, I mean, these are all worthy projects, but not one of them would hit the meter in the Southwest Ward.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
One more.
this is just for
question.
information.
Yeah.
I promised I'd finish on time, so go ahead.
That's over, by the
That's
way.
all. Oh, that's all. Staff, I commend the county coming to us in the past few months, asking to partner and assistance. I would like a list of all of the collaborations we've done, and who was the ask. Was it the city going to the county? And I want to know not just the ones we got, but the ones that we didn't get, that there was no collaboration, even though we asked. And I'd like the reciprocated piece of it too, the county to the city. Okay?
All right, our city attorney has raised her hand. Ma'am, do you have a comment?
Well, I have everybody here not related to this topic, but
That's fine.
the meeting with the delegation will be this Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning in this building.
So we will be meeting with our Raleigh delegation this Friday.
We've been
at 8
trying to
o'clock.
schedule it for weeks, and we just got notification from delegation
This afternoon.
this afternoon.
Breakfast on me, Friday, 8 o'clock, 3rd floor.
Yes, we'll send the notices out.
Okay, public safety's next. How about 6:20?
Public safety will begin at 6:19.
6:19.